You're listening to a Roddenberry podcast.
Mission Log Prodigy, a Roddenberry Star Trek podcast. Episode 28, Is There in Beauty No Truth?
Welcome into another episode of Mission Log Prodigy, a Roddenberry Star Trek podcast. I'm Charlene Schmidt.
And I'm Marina Kravchuk. Just like our flagship Mission Log podcast, each week here on Mission Log Prodigy, we discuss each and every episode of this animated series, discover what makes each one of them special, and see if there are any morals, meanings, or messages that we have learned.
This week we ask, is there in beauty no truth? Please remember that Mission Log Prodigy is an in-depth review podcast, so if you have not seen it yet, you might want to put us on pause, then go watch the episode and then come back. And then you'll hear us talk all about it.
Mission Log Prodigy is produced for YouTube and as a regular podcast, so please be sure to engage the like and share buttons and subscribe to us here on the Roddenberry Entertainment YouTube channel. And if you listen to the audio-only version, please leave us a rating and review wherever you listen to your podcasts. You can also follow Mission Log Prodigy on X, formerly known as Twitter, at ML_Prodigy to keep up with all our latest news and updates.
That's right. Before we jump into the recap, let's remind everybody why this podcast is so unique. And it's because we want to hear from the cadets, the younger Prodigy fans out there who would like to share their thoughts on the show. And so starting with today, we're putting out the call for submissions for next week's episode, The Devourer of All Things, Part 1. We're going back to a two-parter. Woohoo! How do you do that? Here's the rundown. Please send us a 1 to 2 minute voice message at missionlog-prodigy@roddenberry.com and then tell us the following. What is your first name and age? Do you like the episode? What was your favorite part? And what did you learn? The deadline for Devourer of All Things Part 1 is Saturday, August 24th. So please get your comments in before then so we can feature them at the end of our next show.
And all right, so let's kick things off for this show by answering the very questions we're asking our cadets. So, Char, did you like the episode?
Oh, yes, I did. I love this episode so much. And I especially love it for Zero and the journey that they go through. This pays off all the times we have seen and heard Zero wonder about the experiences of corporeal life, something they now understand. And I love that for them. That's wonderful. But of course, the situation isn't puppies and rainbows and happily ever after. No. It's got to be a little more realistic than that. I appreciate that, though, without the situation being really dark and bleak, just because TV nowadays loves to do that. And it's refreshing that this does not. How about you?
Yeah. Oh, did I ever like it? What an absolutely gorgeous piece of work of an episode. I mean, visually, it's absolutely stunning. The visuals of the planet itself, of the space, the noncorporeals with their bodies, absolutely spectacular. The previous episode when we discussed the Fast and the Curious, we talked about how it felt like a real first standalone episode in this season. I think this episode is actually a perfect counterpart for it. They go very well together, yes. So they're like a standalone pair, if you will. And I think it, if you recall, I was talking that it feels like it's the quiet before the storm. So I think it's also kind of a part of this pause before we jump into action. We're basically setting up every single, even in little ways. I mean, we barely see what's going on Voyager A, but we're setting up every single character, like what stage are we at before we head into the second half of the season.
Oh, you are reading my mind, Marina. I love this.
So do you have a favorite part?
I have two things. One's a bigger thing, one's a smaller thing. So I hope that's not cheating too much. The big thing is seeing our crew put themselves on the line just as Zero did for them. And here is my note. This episode and the last really are a complementary pair, opposites of the same coin. Like these two really do work together. And so this episode paired with the last episode, Fast and the Curious, really elevates Fast and the Curious for me. Because I said last week, yeah, it's all right. It's okay, but I'm ready to get going. Well, I changed my mind. This episode helped me change my mind because of what it did thematically as a part of the series. And then also, of course, all for the great stuff with Zero. The second thing I loved was that glorious group hug when Zero's transformation was complete. Oh,
yeah, it's so terribly sweet. the Rock saying, like, I wanted to do this for so long.
Oh, Rock Talk, you
So
steal it every time.
for me, literally everything that had to do with Zero, hands down, everything about Zero. Yes, it was a very quick to arrive solution to, like, oh my God, how are we going to deal with the broken suit? The conundrum from the previous episode. But it works. It really works. And as you said, I love the fact that the crew returns the favor, so to speak. And he stood
Yeah.
up for them, and in return, they're willing to risk themselves to save them. So, here we are. So what did we learn? Just briefly
Okay,
before we get into discussion.
oh man, yeah, we've got so many good lessons here, but briefly, the top two for me were make sure you ask many questions before making a big life-changing decision, but then two, be true to yourself.
Yeah,
That's what
that's
I
very
got.
true.
How about you?
It's again because it is so connected to the previous one. I'm actually going to repeat some of the things that I said as, lessons to be learned from
Sure.
the Fast and the Curious. And so, you support and encourage your friends. We see, examples of that left, right, and center. Being truthful to your friends, being faithful to your friends, and also being faithful to yourself. So I like what you said, being true to yourself.
Love that.
So I think we're basically thinking along the same lines here.
We are sharing a brain,
Yeah.
Marina. Love
So
it.
I think it's time for the episode recap now.
All right, so here we go with episode 28, Is There in Beauty No Truth, written by Keith Sweet II and directed by Rulon Lee and Andrew L. Schmidt. We catch up with our crew via Zero's personal log. The crew is looking diligently for Chakotay and the Protostar, and while they have tried repairing Zero's containment suit, the attempts, with limited resources, have not been successful. Hope arrives in the form of a telepathic communication to Zero from another Medusan, and a whole colony of noncorporeal life forms, in fact. The entities have offered to replace Zero's broken suit, and they aren't too far away. This will divert the crew from their primary mission, but they can put that on pause for now. Zero needs help after sacrificing themselves for the rest of the crew. Dal eventually agrees, and Zero gleefully changes their heading to the colony's coordinates. Yep. They land the Infinity on Avidia 4, a beautiful planet with ring systems on 2 different axes. No need for protective eyewear. These non-corporeal beings have physical bodies, and they are introduced to Ion, the Medusan who talked to Zero. The non-corporeal beings here take pleasure in all sensory experiences, including Jankum's pungent underarms. The crew could have not arrived at a better time, for tonight is the Feast of Senses. Zero can take part and experience it all too, should they choose to be given a living body. It is everything Zero has ever dreamed of, and they agree to the transfiguration. On Voyager, the holographic duplicates are engaged in a Parisi Squares match with the Nova Squadron candidates, and they win handily. The friendly competition isn't the real reason why Nova Squad is there, though. Majel wants Admiral Janeway to see the ragtag group's unusual behavior for herself, and she has seen enough. The EMH scans the holograms and finally detects that their life signs might be completely normal, but their personalities have interchange. What could be wrong? Virus? A mind meld gone wrong? Dal, but with Zero's personality, gives it away by bringing up the EMH's holonovel, where the main character, Rodrigo, creates duplicates of himself. Busted! The EMH can't believe the kids used his own brilliant ideas against him, but the senior staff has bigger problems. Holographic or not, these biosignatures were the only ones aboard Voyager belonging to Rock, Dal, Zero, Jankum, and Murph. And Gwyn? Her last biosignature was detected 2 days ago. All of Voyager's shuttles are accounted for, so Janeway orders Voyager to reverse course so they can search for the Infinity's warp trail. She also orders Tysus to find holographic Gwyn. She may hold the answers they need. Cut back to Zero, who gasps into the consciousness as their transformation completes. Like the other energy beings on this world, Zero now has a living body. Walking takes a little bit of getting used to, but Zero feels... they can feel. The rest of the crew arrives to see Zero, marveling at the transformation. Rock does something that she has been waiting so long to do. She gives Zero a glorious hug, and the rest of the group joins in. Zero delights in the sensation of touching and feeling his friends, and if you would like to experience even more, the Feast of Senses offers just that. It is indeed a lively feast where the energy beings sing, dance, play music, and feast on delicious food. Upon smelling the food, Zero's stomach growls, letting them know they are hungry. Jacob shows by example that this is time to eat all the things, and Zero follows suit. Each food tastes even better than the last, and as Zero munches down, something else creates an uprising in their belly. A big belch. Jankum's impressed. A group of energy beings catch up to Zero and ask if they'd like to dance. Dal nudges them, saying, "Go for it," and Zero takes to the dance floor. Jankum nudges Rock to get out there too and have a little fun, but she's afraid she'll stomp on Zero's new, little, uncoordinated feet. She doesn't want to hurt them. Jankum eventually persuades her to join him, though, with his floor-clearing dance moves. This gives Dal and Gwyn some time alone. He thanks her for sticking up for Zero when he was too focused on their mission to find the Protostar, and reassures her that they will make things right. They must. Ion asks Gwyn and Dal if they are enjoying themselves, and they are. They thank Ion for helping their friend, and then ask about the crowns the other energy life forms are wearing. What are they for? Ion explains that they are for the running of the Nazamon, where the energy beings experience the forgotten sense, fear. It is a reminder that their corporeal bodies are mortal, and if they survive it, it's when they feel most alive. But that's not the really scary part about all of this. Dal and Gwyn learn that the noncorporeal life forms lose their bodies if they ever leave Avidia 4. They have to tell Zero before the running begins. But it's too late. Zero has a crown on their head and learns that it attracts the Nazamon. Just keep up and hopefully get to the other side, advises one of the energy beings. It's okay to be afraid. As Dal, Rock, Jankum, Gwyn, and Murph catch up to Zero, a large, ominous creature approaches out of the clouds. A horn blares, and the race is on. The creature is the Nazamon, and the flowers in the crown attract it to the energy beings, and feasts on them if caught. Dal and Gwyn tell Zero the truth about why the noncorporeal beings never leave this planet, just as they evade a close call with the Nazamon. Zero cannot believe their friends risk their lives to tell them this, but well, of course they would. And Zero deserves to not only make the choice for themselves, but to make an informed choice. Just then, Nazamon scoops Dal into its mouth, and Zero catches up to rescue him before he falls too far down into the creature's cavern. On the ground, Gwyn, Rock, Jankum, and Murph lure the Nazamon back down with the same flowers used in the crowns. It works, and the steep descent down is terrifying and spectacular for Zero and Dal. They drop and make their way back to the ground, and now there's one thing left to do: cross the finish line. They do so, together. At the finish line, Zero tells Ion that they are grateful, no, transformed by the experience, and they do not want to lose their senses now that they have them. However, Zero belongs with their family, and if that means losing their body and their senses in the process, so be it. Ion applauds Zero on making such a noble choice, and they exchange gratitude to each other that their paths crossed. And with the energy beings waving goodbye, the infinity departs. On Voyager, the EMH has reconstructed the Gwyn hologram with the matching personality. He uncovers an 8-minute gap where there are no records in the ship's logs. Hoping that she might have the answers, the EMH activates the Gwyn holoprogram. Janeway explains that she knows this Gwyn is a hologram, and her real-life counterparts took the Infinity. Holographic Gwyn explains that yes, they had to, because of the secret message they assume was from Captain Chakotay. When the EMH asks about her disappearance, though, things take a turn for the worst. It triggers a horrific memory filled with an awful sound. She couldn't move, and whatever was making that sound wanted to take her away, and the EMH takes the Gwyn hologram offline before it all becomes much too intense. Janeway has yet another priority: to find the kids before the creature does first. The beat continued next week.
This is a lot. I mean, still, we somehow every single episode just manages to package so much stuff.
It all does, and we're still building new things into the story. Woo!
Yeah, it's incredible. Now, just to start with our observations, there's a lot of little things, and as always. Kudos to the writers, because you have like little references and other mentions that it weaves so beautifully into the the whole fabric of the Star Trek universe. First of all, the title wordplay. I mean, we already had something like this in season 1, where we have Amok time versus time Amok.
Yes.
And here we have exactly the same thing. The original series episode, Is There in Truth No Beauty, which is actually an episode where we introduced to a Medusan.
Yes.
So I absolutely loved it when I realized that they were doing this. It's such a wonderful little play on, and it's a very meta reference if you think about it.
It really is. Well done, Prodigy
And
team.
then, as I said, like I absolutely adore Zero as a character. Their flair for understatement, and I don't know, it fits so well because Angus Imrie is British, so it's very British way of like, I had a little accident. He's very downplaying his own their own issues and problems, and now they worry that they're becoming a burden because the suit is non-functional,
Yeah.
and it's mission comes first. You don't need to worry about me. And this it's interesting to see that we have this reveal of like they always had uncertainty and emptiness inside, which is what revealed when there isn't this opportunity to be able to experience corporeal sensations and feelings. So, whatever Zero's yearning for, we actually get all of this in this episode, and it's just absolutely wonderful to see.
It really is. So here was a thought I had at the top of the episode
Yeah.
where Gwen says that she and the Protostar can wait so Zero can investigate this colony of noncorporeals. And my first thought was like, but do they though? They can wait because I mean,
Yeah, that
there's still things going on. Her time stabilizer is
Mhm.
unstable. Is timing still a thing for finding the protostar or not? Like, are we on a ticking clock or not? That sort of a
Yeah,
thing.
but at the same time, it's Gwyn being Gwyn, and she has that built-in fairness in her
Oh,
that
totally.
seeing what happened in the Fast and the Curious, she probably thinks like, "Oh, listen, it's only fair,
We owe
like
them one.
all
Yeah,
for one for all, that sort of thing." So yeah, even though I mean she's obviously you can see like that scene with Dal when you can see that she's worried, but
definitely.
again, it's the support of each other. Again, they support each other.
Absolutely. And again, the bookend of this episode and the
Hmm.
last, Zero making the sacrifice now. It's Gwen and the crew's turn.
Yeah, exactly.
I got to talk about Ovidia 4
Oh,
because how beautiful is this
oh my.
place?
I literally kept like I had to watch that, when they on the approach. It is such a beautiful design. My goodness, the art is like we need
Top
behind the
notch.
scenes discussion of how this was conceived and created because it's absolutely stunning to see.
It is beautiful. Like even just the visual of a video 4 with the ring systems on
Hmm.
two different axes, like that is just so cool and so pretty. I actually just the first time I watched this episode, I just paused it and marveled at it for a second, like,
Yeah.
gosh, I want this to be my desktop wallpaper. It's so pretty. You know, that kind of thing. I'm going to look at it all the time.
Now, a wonderful thing, I mean, again, we have this interesting science, which is very Star Trek. And it's like, because you start thinking really hard, how exactly is it going to work? You don't have to think about it. It works within the fabric of the story. So we have a planet that has very unique characteristics. The rings decay, do something with the atmosphere, and that fosters and heals physical forms. And I'm watching this, I'm like, I'm actually getting Insurrection vibes, the Star Trek Insurrection, the movie,
Oh, hmm.
because it was a very similar thing with Baku had access to this thing that the planet they were inhabiting had that was making them live forever for all intents and purposes. So it had this
Certainly.
sort of like very vibes, like you have this very special planet that, does things to a physical body. But at the same time, it's an interesting concept that the physical bodies in this case are non-corporeal beings, and we again get references to other creatures that have been mentioned or were a part of other Star Trek productions, namely what we already are aware of Medusans, which comes out of the original series. But they
Hmm.
they also mention that there are Poxans, which and Calamarines, both of which come from the next generation. So
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
lovely that we have that, even though I do have a question about Paxans because they're supposed to be very xenophobic. So how on earth they're coexisting with
Mm.
not even so much perhaps other visitors coming to the planet, but other non-corporeal creatures? That's a question. But we don't know about that. They're there. That's an
Yeah.
interesting.
It's a great side note and possibly future story material because I can see why that wasn't explored here. It
Yeah.
just didn't need to be a part of it. But it's a
Yeah.
really good question and it's something that could be explored later. I love that. Uh, were you worried at all when Zero very quickly agreed to the transformation? Did like did your alarm bells go off? Because mine
Yeah.
certainly did. I was immediately
I
weary of everybody.
I yeah, it
You
was
know, the
too good.
kind offer. It's too good to
Mhm.
be true,
It's
Zero.
good, too good.
Don't do
Exactly.
it.
And it's very much, I mean, the Ion being so incredibly, wise and welcoming and all of this, enjoy yourselves. It's like, yeah, definitely kind of like, especially having that much Star Trek in the past, it's like ding, 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 something's going on here. It's very ominous.
Right?
I mean, especially when we find out that Ion concealed, the truth that Zero's new
Yes.
self, physical self, will deteriorate if they make the choice to leave Avidia 4. And my first thought was like, is that foreshadowing? What is going to happen?
Right.
So yeah, it's mm,
Yeah,
yeah, lots of alerts going in my head.
I had a whole conversation going on inside my head where I'm thinking to myself, are you just being too much of a cynic? There really are nice people out there. But at the same time, no, 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 no. This is a little too smooth, and there's just no way this is happily ever after. And no, keep watching. It's going to fall apart somehow. Let's find out. I cannot help but wonder if the corporeal bodies of Avidia 4's inhabitants were modeled or at least inspired by Angus Imrie himself, the voice of Zero. He's kind of got this tall, lanky body if you see photos of him.
Yeah,
And there's a lot of similarities in the face, I noticed, when you compare him to these inhabitants. And I'm just thinking,
yeah,
was that intentional? I gotta
yeah.
know. This is a
So
question on our
that's another
running
question for
list.
the behind the scenes art production. Absolutely. I mean,
Absolutely.
that's it's wonderful.
I
But
wrote it
just
down.
generally speaking, it's a what a delight. I mean, if you look closely, background non-corporeals, it's not they all different. Not a single, design like facial features, everything. They all look different. I mean, obviously they all look similar because of the concept, like the body created by the planet's physical characteristics. But at the same time, they're all, you look at it, it's like, yeah, that's Zero and that's Ion and all the other little characters that show up in the background. Absolutely beautifully done. So it fits. When I first saw it, I'm like, yes, I can totally see that that's Zero. Yeah,
Yeah,
fantastic, fantastic design.
absolutely. And so vibrant. Everything about
Yeah.
this planet is just full of
The
life. I love
I
it so much.
absolutely love the concept of Nazimon because it looks like a sea creature. And it's like
Yes.
it's obviously flying, just gliding through the clouds. At the same time, it's like I have the visuals of what we have in the oceans on Earth. So again, I am dreaming of like special featurette or something, just basically the folks talking about how they created this because this is an absolute stunner of an episode.
Absolutely. I would love to see a 20-minute featurette just on this episode.
Yeah,
You could
yeah.
fill it, no
Uh,
problem.
so speaking of excitement, rock. I love it. Like because science, the whole thing.
Science!
She thinks, the whole idea is like, yes, it's energy to matter, it's biotransference. We have, the complex hydrocarbons that are formed in the atmosphere. She's so excited, and she's excited for Zero because this is such an incredible thing that's gonna happen to them.
Yeah.
So again, it's a wonderful thing that's fully in line with what the character is. It's like I was waiting for Rock to actually say something, seeing how that's the science brain of the crew.
Yeah. Yeah, and in that oh so subtle way, once again, she explains a little bit of the science of what is happening and why it does theoretically
Yeah,
work
as always.
without getting
Mhm.
too technical, and her enthusiasm just makes it so much fun.
Yeah, just to convey like what an exciting scientific thing is occurring. It's absolutely wonderful.
Yeah. Well, speaking of following up on things from previously, yes, Majel reported the unusual behavior.
Mhm.
You mentioned that last week.
Yep.
And finally, Janeway and the senior staff are aware, but it took Majel to get them aware.
Exactly. But don't you find it funny that literally the moment like there is no like, oh, infinity must have not been destroyed. We do not have like explicitly being said. It was like almost immediately like they took infinity. And Jane was like, well, of course they did. Like you can like literally see like it's like, yes, turn around, let's go look for the warp core trail warp trail. It's not even the question. It's like, of course they did,
But
because
I
it's,
love I love when Tyses interjects, okay, what could it have been? Is it the a mind meld gone wrong? Is there some sort of virus taking over the ship? All the Trek tropes that we could have possibly gone
uh-huh.
through first before the actual answer comes to light.
I just love it. It's like everybody has their thing that's just so perfect for that character. I mean, Jenkamp, again, he is the comedic relief in so many ways. His
He
quip is
is.
like, oh, it's just a bug bunch of nobodies. Get it?
Yeah, nobodies. Yeah.
And other things which I guess, the younger audience would certainly appreciate because it's sort of like, a disgusting thing that makes you laugh. A burping contest for, Murph just as like, Murph, we get it. You don't have to. Or,
Look, I'm
Dal
a grown
being so
adult and I laughed.
my favorite was actually when Dal says, like, my God, that's the most amazing thing I've ever had. I have to get more of this. And Ion goes like, oh, I see you've discovered the stomach juices of Valar hog.
Yeah.
I just cracked up. It's like, oh God. Yeah.
That doesn't
Oh,
sound good when you put it that way.
no, all of a sudden it's like, no, all the good feelings gone.
Speaking of things to appreciate, I love the oh so subtle callback to when Zero distracted
Uh-huh.
the EMH by asking him about the holo novel. Like, what a
Yeah.
subtle but satisfying way to pay that little detail off in this story. I just thought that's so smart. Way to
Yeah.
go, writers. You're just
And
killing it.
EMH again being EMH, foiled by my own
Egotistical.
brilliant storylines. I mean, he just can't help but have this
It's,
overblown ego right there.
oh my
I love
God.
the fact that we finally see a pretty explicitly of what Parisi Squares is. It's been mentioned so
Yes.
many times. We've had characters injured or even, passed on because they got hurt in that game. We've had, the uniforms and the mallets and all of this mentioned throughout multiple series, but we'd never actually seen how it's played. And now we get a fantastic visual. At least we get an idea of all those moving platforms and the stuff that you have to hit. So this was very exciting. It's sort of like for the very
Yes.
first time seeing, I don't know, a sonic shower, for example, which I happen to Voyager, if memory serves right.
Yes.
It's great to have like a reference that's been there for, well, decades, literally now, and we finally have, know what it looks like.
Yeah, this is the clearest picture of what Parisi
Uh-huh.
Squares looks like and how you play it. Like you said, we've had the references, little teeny bits and pieces for decades, and now finally here is where we get a better picture.
Yeah,
And
I am sure. I'm
yeah,
sure the cosplayers will be all over this because now you can develop it further. I suppose what exactly does that thing look like?
I fully
Uh,
expect to see whole teams at conventions next year.
yeah,
It'll be great. I got to give a shout out to Nami once again for Zero's musical theme and the way it transforms as Zero transforms. And it really does encapsulate, and for lack of a better word, the feeling of
yeah,
being truly transformed. Just absolutely nailing that and has this otherworldly quality to it that makes it such a joy to listen to. I cannot wait for when we get a real release of the soundtrack because I'll be listening to this one over and over and over.
yeah,
Let's
absolutely.
see. Dal's self awareness
Hmm.
is definitely improving, as proven by him thanking Gwen for sticking up for Zero when they're alone and sampling the stomach juice. And he is learning, he is changing. It's really nice to see. Like, this is not a big bullet point in this story, but it's still happening. It's just
Yeah.
cool to see.
And it's wonderful to see him support. And again, that scene where he's like, we will succeed. We must. It's gonna
Yes.
happen. We're gonna help each other. It's gonna work out.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. It's kind of a
he's
reminder to
definitely
us.
growing. Yeah. It's
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 a,
almost like I think you mentioned it in one of the previous reviews where it's step forward, two steps back. Whereas in Fast and Curious, you feel like Dal being reckless, he usual self, and here he's being incredibly sensitive. That was
oh,
absolutely lovely
yeah.
to see.
And supportive and
Hmm.
saying, okay, yeah, this, like, we are going to figure this out. We're not getting pulled by the
Yeah,
wayside by this whole thing. We still have the longer term goal at hand, and it will happen. We will find out what's going on with your time stabilizer. We'll find Chakotay in the Protostar. We've got to fix this. It's a reminder to us, too, that yes, that
yeah,
thread's still out there among many other things. Because we have taken a little bit of a break from that for the last couple of
yeah.
weeks.
Yeah, and if you think about it very carefully, I mean, we still continue having all sorts of things, accumulating. We now
Oh,
have
yeah.
more and more mysteries.
More threads.
We still, where is Protostar? Where is Chakotay? What was the benevolent entity? It's all kind of keeps going there. I'm like, kids are very
Yeah.
strong to kind of like not to be overwhelmed with everything they have ahead. Yeah,
Right? As we've said before on the show many times already, one crisis at a time, I
yeah,
suppose. It'll all
exactly.
come to a
Hmm.
head.
Yeah.
One last note I have is I love the twist in the big reveal, and it's not
Yeah.
even that the running invokes fear in us as the audience, like oh Zero's going to be in danger. It's that non-corporeal bodies are going to deteriorate if they leave the planet, which means that that's what will happen to Zero if they leave. He's got to leave, right? So
Or is Zero going to stay? Are we losing Zero?
could that
That's a question.
happen?
Yeah, could that happen once they cross the line?
Oh, yeah. Well, how about with that very heavy point? We ought to get into the
Yeah.
discussion because there's even more heavier stuff to get into here.
Mhm.
So, what were some of the things that you found meaningful or memorable in this episode?
Well, since Zero is the focal point, there are quite a few things, and the one that I absolutely adore is the fact that Zero is referred to as the curious one multiple times. That's one of the most important facets of their character, and I think it actually defines their choice, the choice that they make. And
Hmm.
I will talk about this later. So in this case, it's a fascinating situation that they're put in where they have to make this, as you said, life-changing choice. And here we are, like how this choice is made and what the resulting choice is. That's the crux of the story here. So, you know, as you said, it's too good to be true. It probably is. To a certain degree, it is, but we do get a lot of positive things because, as we know, at the end of the season, sorry, at the end of the episode, Zero does have their body in place.
Right.
Um,
Well, and here's the thing. It would not have been too good to be true if Ion had simply acknowledged that if you do choose to undergo this
mhm,
transformation, we don't know what's going to happen if you leave. We've had,
mhm,
it sounds like other people have tried and their bodies have deteriorated. Did that mean
yeah.
they came back down and they got fixed or what have you? But without that knowledge,
Or after the running, perhaps having had this incredible adrenaline, shot into their bodies, basically hearts pumping and all that, the fear of losing the body, losing the feelings, scared the other non-corporeals so much that none of them left. They're all, everybody who joined in is still there on the planet.
but
We
then
don't
how
know.
would they know their bodies would deteriorate?
Yeah, so they must have some kind of knowledge then
Yeah,
what
they
happens because it was
know
they
the
was so
rings nourish
certain.
them.
Yeah. Hmm.
But beyond that, yeah, I mean it's
Yeah.
sort of a glossed over point. We don't have to know all of the
Yeah.
science, I guess, but it's
Eh,
still like such an important detail to Zero that it is important.
I love the fact that Ion was, like it was so ominous. Yeah, like I said, like there were alerts going on in my brain, thinking like something's going on. Maybe Ion is up to something. But they were wise enough to acknowledge. They were really cool about the whole thing. It's like, yes, this is a noble choice that it's. Of course, they had a very twisted way of presenting this amazing opportunity, but I suppose it certainly makes a very strong point. It's like you don't know what you have until you're put in a situation where you're possibly going to lose it. But at the same time, look at that. It was very nice that Ian turned out to be a good person and was actually like, yeah, that's a noble choice. Kudos, good
Yeah.
luck to you.
I'd
Um,
love to talk about that a little more.
yeah. Now, going back to what I said, the fact that Zero is referred to the curious one, I think part of it is yes, it's part of this crew, their found family, his bond to the rest of the kids is the main reason why they're not staying. But that moment when Zero was saying, I'm grateful for the experience, transformed, I don't want to leave, but in a way you made me come to my senses. If Zero is self-aware enough to realize that that's exactly why they cannot stay. They're curious. If they stay, they're no longer really Zero. They lose their ability to remain curious, to be an explorer. So I was reminded there's a quote from Spock where Spock says he's saying, "Having is not so pleasing a thing after all as wanting." And Zero wanted so much to have corporeal experience, and now that he has it, is it really worth it to cut off everything else and just remain on the planet and have this very hedonistic lifestyle that, I mean, let's face it, I mean, all they're doing is just enjoying themselves. I don't think there's much probably exploration or science going on. We don't know, but it certainly looks like they're basically stuck on that planet. So in this case, I
Right.
think yes, it's very much obvious that yes, we are talking about being part of the team, being part of a found family. But at the same time, it's Zero understanding that they will lose a lot of themselves if they remain and
Yeah.
not be an explorer anymore.
I mean, it really is kind of a weighing the benefits type of a
Hmm.
situation where you could probably have a really happy life on this planet. I mean, plentiful, delicious food and all the sensory experiences you could ever want. Sounds great, especially for a non-corporeal life form who is just beginning to experience this sort of a thing. However, at the cost of losing your found family, that is something I have a feeling Ion did not anticipate when making this
Yeah.
proposal because I really got to wonder, did Ion have a point about experiencing the sensations before making a complete choice? Like, it's not really fair, but is that a valid point? Because how do you know until you know?
Yeah. Here's something else. Like, a lot of the non-corporeals that we met before tended to be described as basically hive minds. They're part of a
Mm,
whole. When Zero describes their life before they met everybody else, before they were captured, they were part of a traveling troupe of other Medusans.
that's true.
So it's quite possible that the non-corporeals that made it to that planet were lonely. They were by themselves. So, on top of everything else, they're also part of the community on the planet, whereas Zero does have the benefit of being part of a wonderful crew of, people that they love.
Right. Zero already has a
Hmm.
community. Whereas, I think from Ion's point of view, it sounds like Ion was a little bit of a lost soul, found this planet and non-corporeals and found their community and thought maybe they were offering the same thing to Zero as another lone, curious traveler. Hey, come down and experience all the things. Cool. But again, it's that whole issue of Zero's already got family. And even if it is fellow non-corporeals, I think that's again a very Star Trek message of sometimes your found family has more profound
Hmm.
meaning than maybe like your blood family in terms of like, oh, you've met similar Medusans and what have you, does not carry the same weight as being with the
Yeah,
crew.
yeah.
Yeah. What's another thing you've got?
Oh, let's see. I loved the take on with like of the forgotten feeling, fear, but they're not talking fear, like fear of the unknown, fear of the future, fear of getting hurt, any kind of like unpleasant
Yeah.
physical sensation. It's specifically the feeling of mortality. That's the fear. So that's an interesting take on it because it's like, yeah, I'm afraid I'm going to die and I want to keep my body, so I'm not leaving. It's a very specific way of putting it. And again, Zero has wisdom of yeah, this is an opportunity to experience completely different way of life, and they don't want to do it by themselves. They don't want to stay on the planet. They want to explore and they want to continue with, take the next steps with the people they love, as I said.
Right.
It's another lovely lesson, I think, here, where it's the shared experience that defines this whole thing rather than, yeah, I'm gonna stick around and be with other Medusans.
Right. Well, here's another thing that I thought of was like the running, this experience of your adrenaline's going to spike and your heart's pumping.
Hmm.
And if you survive it, your feeling of defeating mortality essentially is exhilarating. Well, this is why we go on roller
Yeah, they,
coasters as human
yeah, they're adrenaline.
beings and
Yeah,
other
they're
risky
adrenaline.
activities.
They're like adrenaline junkies, basically. I mean, I'm actually curious. I'm like, how many times do they participate in the running? Is that
Good
every, like,
question.
how often do they have the Feast of the Senses? Is it like,
Right. Is
I
it
don't
once
know,
a
every
year, once a
once a
month?
year, everybody get together and let's run? Because you already ran, you already got scared, you're already stuck on the planet. Like, would you do it again?
And would it be diminishing returns after a little while? Because
Yeah,
you kind of know the gamut of it all. And
yeah,
I don't know, but it does seem like they do take things to somewhat of an extreme on this planet.
yeah.
Like they really feel like they are fully engaged in the feeling of all the things.
Again, going back to Dell being a far more sensitive person in this case. That moment when he says it doesn't matter if zero stays or goes, as long as they survive. That I thought that was very important because Dell was actually being not unlike, some of the other situation where we had where, you know, well, since Dell, deems himself the captain, but
Mhm.
basically the leader of the group, if you will, has to consider of somebody leaving for whatever reason. We've
Yeah.
had that in multiple cases. And in this case, I think it's not even a matter of being upset that, oh, we potentially might, lose zero because they might decide to stay on the planet. It doesn't matter as long as zero is healthy and happy. So
Yeah.
that was, I thought, was a lovely thing to see as well.
Yes. It was very cool to see the crew, the kids, so supportive of Zero throughout this whole thing, deciding to make that transformation. Cool, Zero. We are all for it. Rock is super excited about the science
Yeah,
that's going to make all of this work. And then afterward, the big group hug after it's complete, like, oh my gosh, Zero, this is amazing. Even if they do decide to go their own way, we got to support that choice too, because that's what's best for them. And we'll have to do what we have to do, but they can do what they need to do as well. A
yeah,
lot of
yeah,
supportiveness in there. Yeah.
yeah.
Let's see. My last point, I think, is about, well, it's actually the quote of the choice is yours, but you have a right to know everything before you make it, juxtaposed with my life is my own to decide. I appreciate how both of these things are true
True.
at the
Hmm.
same
Hmm.
time. Like you have the right to make a choice about what happens to you and make big life decisions for yourself, but you also have the right to know what you're getting into. And unfortunately, Ion took that away. That became a deal breaker for me,
Yeah. But
obviously. But
yeah, thankfully Zero had supportive friends who helped him out, who risked their lives in order for him to have all the information before they made the choice. That was
yes,
absolutely wonderful.
yeah, absolutely.
So the small observation, so to speak, as far as what we see on Voyager, again, Majel is being very helpful. Majel is being Majel.
Yes,
But I love the fact that that's what's moving the main storyline for now, at least, because
on
we're
Voyager.
still,
Yeah.
the main thing, find Chakotay. But it is very ominous. So now, on top of the benevolent entity, we have this thing that was screaming, that was about to grab Gwyn, well, the holodupe Gwyn, but nevertheless, time is literally missing, like 8 minutes. Like it just poof,
Yeah.
that doesn't
Gone.
happen. So it's nice to see Janeway and company sort of kick into gear because something's going on. Something is apparently hunting the crew. So what does that mean? So we have
Yeah.
another mystery on top of the pile that we already have from the earlier earlier episodes.
Yes.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. So
There's a lot
let's
of mysteries going on Voyager right now.
yeah.
Janeway's very busy.
Let's well wrap up. So
How
as we said,
about it?
there was so many layers. This was an entertaining, very beautiful, but also very deep episode. So the concepts of the found family, the making choices, knowing oneself. I thought that was a wonderful thing to consider.
Absolutely.
And so again, we're kind of hanging on the precipice right now. It's sort of like a continuation of it's like what's going to happen next because we still need to find the protostar. We still, we need to figure out what's going on with those unusual, who's helping, who's screaming, what's going on. And of course, Voyager A is about to follow them. So I feel the storylines are going to converge again. And yeah, let's see what's going to happen with the horrible things.
Right. And let's not forget also Essentia's out there causing a lot of trouble
That's true.
in the
Yeah.
background. We'll catch up to
Something.
that, no doubt.
Yeah, we haven't heard what's going on in Solomon in a while, so
She's
certainly
probably, yeah, instilled a
things are
lot of
not, I'm
fear.
sure, things are not quiet. Yeah.
Yeah, with her, never. Yes, so I guess to wrap up my thoughts, I love how the story has so many layers to it about what it means to be true to oneself, to be true to your friends, what it means to be a family. I hope we've gone deep enough on these themes to emphasize just how meaningful they all are. Like, this is such a really well done story. At the same time, it's packaged in this way that is really fun and engaging to any audience while taking one of our characters through a life changing journey. That's not an easy task. Um, But you know what? The writers make it look easy because that's how good they are at their craft. And this is just the latest example of that we've looked at, and with many more to come. So,
oh yes. All right. So we've reached the end of our show. So thank you everyone for joining us here on Mission Log Prodigy. If you enjoyed our show, please make sure you like, share, and subscribe to our Mission Log Prodigy playlist on the Roddenberry Entertainment YouTube channel, or find us on your podcast catcher of choice. Mission Log Prodigy is produced by Roddenberry Entertainment. Production and technical direction by Earl Green. Our website and your opportunity to comment and connect with us is missionlogpodcast.com. And if you'd like to support Mission Log directly, you can do so at patreon.com/missionlog.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. Next week, we will take a look at The Devourer of All Things, Part 1. Don't forget to watch that episode and send us your thoughts no later than Saturday, August 24th. You can do that at missionlog-prodigy@roddenberry.com, and we can't wait to hear what you have to say about that. But right now, let's hear what you have to say about this episode.
Receiving listener communications. Message playback begins.
What is your name and age?
My name is Dietrich and my age is 6.
Did you like the episode?
Yes.
What was your favorite part of the episode?
When they're doing the running of the Nazinum.
That was a pretty cool part, wasn't it? Was it exciting?
Yes.
What did you learn in this episode?
That Zero has such good friends.
How were they such good friends to Zero?
Because they knew that Zero might not be staying with them anymore, and they accepted that.
So they were willing to let Zero make the choice that was best for them?
Yes.
That does really sound like good friends. Mm-hmm. We should all have friends like that, huh?
Yeah.
This is a Roddenberry podcast. For more great podcasts, visit podcast.roddenberry.com.